Incoming greetings! Welcome to another video of the series of the curious case of LittleFish 10. Today I want to focus about this. How he uses systematically ctrl+shift+R, in case you don't know, is to register the repetition, as I'm doing now. So basically it's the same thing as ctrl+J. I have actually one video on that difference. He says, in 2019, he said, Supermemo keeps trying to push me to higher and higher intervals with the newer algorithms. Keep in mind he started Supermemo at 2006. So he used Supermemo 18, 17, 16, 15, and older that they are not even used originally. Didn't use the numbers, but the name of the year, something like that. But I am afraid to commit to some of the suggestions because the intervals are so high. There's nothing wrong with that. You know that his rotation rate, more or less the same year, 2009, from the common. His rotation rate is massive. How can we explain a 99 point something retention rate, which is close to the maximum, close to perfection? Well, it's because he, quote unquote, is cheating the algorithm to do more repetitions, to reduce the intervals. Therefore, consequently, increasing the retention rate. So instead of here, I'm putting a decided forgetting index could be up to just 3%. This will get a lot of more repetitions. He's manually setting the intervals. Let's go back. I know it's trying to bring me my forget index back down because it's too high. I don't think so. I will say the retention rate back down because it's too high. His forgetting index, super low. But I'm afraid of cards I will forget during the fall. Fall in the sense of the season of the year. That was in June. Okay, makes sense. So I get this worry, and this in some degree, it's true. You will forget part of what you have done. But that's the thing. You will lapse it and it will take part of the learning process again. And if you do this enough, you will leech the card, and if you leech the card, you will have the alert. And you will make a decision there. It's all. Should I reformulate this? Should I split in different cards? Or it's too soon to create this card? I'm lacking some previous knowledge, therefore this should wait. Then make sure I have all the previous knowledge, and then I will start doing that card again, right? There's some explanation always. And that's not bad, because for wanting a higher retention rate, he's making a huge trade-off. And this trade-off are doing a lot more repetitions. And that repetition for a marginal increase in retention rate is not worth it. You could have learned something else instead of doing more reps. Let's continue. I know I will eventually get them back, but I don't want to wait for 1 or 1.5 years to review something I just reviewed only 40 or 50 days ago. Okay, let's do the math. Let's make 1.5 years. Those are the days, and 15. So basically, it's an increase of 11 times. So the U factor will be close to 11 in the worst case possible. Or if we use just a year and 40, it will be 9. Okay, between 9 and 11. Okay, that's a huge increase that it won't happen in Anki, but it's possible in Supermemo. But why is this negative? That means if you're successful, all the items that are successfully recalled, you will have done whatever reps you need to go to 40 or 50 days. In my case, 1 or 2 reps, assuming no lapses. And if it comes from close, a very high priority close, it will be up to 5. The maximum, I would say 4 or 5 reps. Then I do one more rep, 6 reps, let's say at maximum. What could happen? Yeah, some of those will be forgotten. What's the big deal? I will lapse them and they will restart the interval at 1 day or whatever. Depends on the priority, What's the deal? I'm free learning. Do I have a deadline to know specific subset of knowledge at some point of time? No. So therefore, it's just a mindset that, oh, I want to know that and I want to know everything and very quickly and so on, right? Like, for instance, people who wants to leave home and have the home absolutely clean, right? Is, oh yeah, but I cannot leave, I don't know, the kitchen dirty, even if at some degree or whatever, right? Not a big deal. You could do it next day when you get home or whatever, right? It's no, no, no. I want the entire home, all the apartment, spot on clean before going outside. It's just a mindset. You don't need to do that, right? Same here. You're human. Even if you minimize the interference, you have all the previous knowledge you have. You follow the outstanding queue every day. You will still forget. We're human. So it's just a preference. And what happens? If the card has 40 days and you lapse it, oh, you only need to wait 40 more days at the maximum, at the worst. But if it's a year, it's okay. I succeeded on this recall, 40 days. The next interval will be a year. So I will need a year to realize I forgot that. Perhaps I will forget it in next week, let's say. But I will need 50 weeks to realize that at the first week, I forgot that already. Well, priorities are for that. If you follow priorities, by the way, his LittleFish Chan is not using priorities to my knowledge. He said that. If you use high priorities, what will happen? This is unlikely to happen unless the item has been long outstanding. And this scenario is absolutely unlikely because if a very high priority element it's kept outstanding for long means you're not using Supermemo at all. It's almost the only scenario possible to do. Or you're always using subsets to take out, to filter out that element. It's the only way to achieve that. So therefore, I think this is based, first, his worry, and second, his neglecting priorities. So anything that is kind of low will be prone to have that. Then, next chapter, next paragraph. I know Wozniak seems to live his life based around plan. That's true, which is totally awesome for him. For me, I see a tool of focusing on the task at hand and not getting overwhelmed by the urge of move stuff around versus actually doing something. Okay, so that depends on the user. I don't actually need that. I have enough focus, and if I lose focus, but within Supermemo, for me that's not a bad thing. I'm just following my land drive. The land drive is boss. So that means if I'm going in a tangent and I'm spending a lot of time in a tangent that it was not in planned to do that, for me that's still a success. I haven't lost anything. And I will tell you more. It's better than following the plan because I'm following serendipity. It's something I will have never searched for. It's something I will have never planned to do. It's still better. So for me, this is not a negative thing. Let's say I have postponed something I plan to do. I will do it next day, next time, next day, whatever that may be. No worries. I'm free learning. If I am free learning, the learning drive is boss. I don't need metrics. I don't have to do that many flashcards per 10 minutes per day and whatever. I do whatever I want. It sounds like silly. Now that I'm saying this, it sounds very silly. But it couldn't get simple than that. That's why if you see my metrics, I am so inconsistent. Look how inconsistent I am. I'm skipping days. Some days I do a lot. And look at when I create items, new items. Look, some days I do nothing. 10, 40, 14, 100. What the heck? That's very bad. How in the world you will create more than 100 items a day? Oh, but look at the repetitions of the topic. Look how many topics I have done. More than 100 topics. That's a big deal of commitment. And what happens when I do a lot of repetitions like this is that I also will do a lot of close relations. Makes sense. So you could see that yes, the average is 14, but look at that. It's so dispersed, right? And this, you could say, oh, this is not optimum for the protection rate and for the incremental reading workload. Absolutely agree. It is it is far from optimal, but it is optimum in the sense of the learning drive. I was hooked, and now I don't remember. I cannot pinpoint what happened that day. Let me see. Okay, it's because now I have a split collections, so I can see most of the repetitions were from English. Oh yeah, look at that. Effective altruism, genius, acceleration of... Oh, nice. So to sum up this video, there's no wrong and right. Depends on you. What I do suggest is to follow your drive. That's it. Okay, second part. That is actually from an earlier standpoint, but within the same year, 2019. He says, I usually set the first interval date myself. That means that whatever the first interval Supermemo is calculating, he overrules it systematically. Over the years, I have been able to fill out what stuff I do remember easier and what stuff I do forget easier. Yeah, more or less you have this feeling. It's heuristic, so we are not as precise as a machine. Language items or the stuff of a technical nature, I do 1 or 3 days, first interval. We could say that this is more semantic in nature. General knowledge, that I think you will remember, gets 7 to 10 days, which we would say comes from incremental reading and is semantic knowledge, something you reason. It's not like in language that, oh, how do you say hello in Chinese or that word, and that's it. You have to memorize it. There's no reasoning you can do. Gotcha. You know, in one video, it will be in one corner, I said how the close interval is calculated in Supermemo. Basically, you have from 1 day to 40 days possible interval, and this is decided uniquely by the priority. If you don't use priorities, you are neglecting priorities, you have trouble because Supermemo will set huge intervals for what is low priority. Therefore, one of the ways, if you want to still keep neglecting priorities, will be to manually overrule the first interval, which is quite a commitment, to be honest. I think this needs more commitment than actually using priorities for real. Then, Supermemo can be funky with early intervals, or at least with me in this case. No, keep in mind the close interval doesn't rely on your performance and your stats and your collection. It is 100% relying on priority. So I usually choose my own first interval and let it do its thing after that. So basically, he is overruling Supermemo algorithms until at some point. That's so sad. So he has been using Supermemo for 16 years. Yet he has been overruling. So one of the advantages of Supermemo is that you do less repetitions. And especially, those repetitions are less dense at the first stage. So when you are in 1 year interval, the difference will be lower because at some repetitions, the interval will outlive you, right? You get into the decades, so it's likely you won't do any more rep or just one. So when you do a day, 4 days, a week and a half, a month, 3 months, and this kind of thing is in Supermemo when it cuts down a lot. Because if I have 30 days or 10 days, the next is a month and a half, and next is half a year already. So instead of 7 reps, I just did 3. It's quite a difference. And it's quite saddening. It's quite to see that, oh wow, now makes sense why this user, LittleFish Chan, why he don't have done more than 2 million repetitions. Let's take a wild guess. What would have happened if he never reset the interval and he just kept going with the algorithm? Yes, he will have increased the lapse count, so he will have done more reps in some cards. But what will be the overall repetition count? So he has a huge advantage by using Supermemo if we compare to Anki, let's say. But the main advantage, it's kind of overruled because he's manually setting 103 days interval anyways. So one of the most time-saving advantages, it's almost gone for the language learning. And based on my knowledge, most of what he does is language quantity based. If he's setting a week or 10 days for an incremental reading, let's say, well, it's still something, right? It's better than the language thing. So he gets some benefit. It's like he will only get the close interval of certain priority range, and that's it. So still not good enough because you won't get high intervals because they are low priority, and if they are low priority, are prone to be forgotten. That's why are low priority to begin with. They can be forgotten. It doesn't matter if you forgot that because there's plenty more stuff you want before that. So if you have to forget something, you choose what to forget, you will choose the low priority to be forgotten. That's why priorities are used for that. So my best guess is that he will have done less repetitions. Let's say heuristically 3 or 4 less repetitions per non-lapsed item. Larger intervals, you will increase the forgotten index, therefore decreasing the priority, decreasing the retention rate. So for some cards, he will have done, let's say, double the amount of reps, but this is representative of a tiny, tiny fraction of his collection. So therefore, let's say he saves 3 reps in 100,000 items, and he doubles the amount of repetitions in the remaining 9,000 or 4,000. It's still a net benefit. And instead of 2 million, perhaps would be 1.6 million or something like that. I don't know. For instance, I could compare heuristically with my collection. In Anki, I had multiple million. I have more repetitions than his. And if I compare more or less what I have done in 2 years with English, I have done far less than half the repetitions. So I hope this has been useful for you. There's some insights. And it will be nice if you are critic with that. Don't take my word. Don't take his word. Don't take Piotr's word. Be critical. Accept what is useful for you. Discard what's useless, and make it your own. As easy as that. My recommendation: take that as a biased, subjective recommendation. Is as soon as possible get into priorities. Not at the beginning, not at the first day, but at the second week. Even if it's super heuristically, just with the colors. That's the first step. Incrementally, you will get there. Let's see, no pun intended. Make priorities a priority. Learn to master and to learn how to use priorities in Supermemo before you get into trouble. Trouble in the sense of information overload. And rely on priorities. Because if you use this approach, you will have to spend a lot more time recalling things and do it more manually. And therefore, what are you using Supermemo for? The advantage that you have on the algorithm, it's minimized. So why having such a limited software with so many lacking features? So keep that in mind. I even myself have moved on from Supermemo for language learning, at least other than English. Feel free to leave a message, and nothing more to it today. See you next time.